Hey, good morning from blustery Kansas City. Welcome to SportsBeat Live, our weekly interactive show where we talk Kansas City Royals with you and the folks who cover the team, like Lynn Worthy and Vahe Gregorian and Sam McDowell. Um, Guys, how about the Royals yesterday? 3-1 victory over the Cleveland Guardians. I got to remember to say Guardians. And nice opening day performance by the Royals. I'll leave it up to you where we start here. Do we go with how to calculate a magic number or where to get playoff tickets? Which way do you want to go on this? Because I think Kansas City Royals fans pretty happy with themselves today and with what they saw on opening day. So before we get into the topics, let me just remind you that this is your show as much as ours. Please send us your questions and comments, and we will get to as many of them as we can. So, um, good place to start, Lynn, is at the end and work our way backwards. The Royals came into the eighth inning, game tied, bottom of the eighth, game tied at 1. And Bobby Witt was not due up right. It was he was the fourth or fifth hitter in the inning, and then this happened. Monty, let's go ahead and get it out of the way early here.
Line to left field, into the corner. Base hit number 1, RBI number 1, and Bobby Witt Jr. gives the Royals the lead in the bottom of the eighth.
Welcome to the big leagues, Bobby Witt Jr. You just got your first big league knock with a stake attached. Crowd liking it here at Kauffman Stadium, chanting his name like he's a superstar.
Like he's a superstar. Pretty big moment, Lynn, wasn't it? The way it's set up and for him to come through in that was big time.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think Mike Matheny was the one who said you couldn't have scripted it, pretty much any better. For the kid who we've written so much about, people have talked so much about, for people have heard so much about and been waiting for, this time last year, people were, almost rioting about how come he's not on the opening day roster, even though he played, I think, a total of 37 professional baseball games. And so now he's finally here. And so what he's doing in his first game with the game on the line, delivers a RBI doublet, basically drove in the winning run. They ended up winning 3-1, and he ended up scoring the insurance run too, just to finishing touches on it. But yeah, I mean, it was, and I was wondering if it was, as the innings going on, I was like, it's not really going to unfold this way, is it? I mean, because you get Michael Taylor walks, they bunt him over, and so you've got a runner in scoring position, the tie game for Whit Merrifield, and then Bobby, and you figure Witt's probably, Witt's a really good situational guy. He probably knocks it in, and if not, then it comes down to the kid. Witt strikes out, so now it's 2 outs, and it comes down to the kid, and the kid delivered.
On a pitch that was probably not a strike, little up and in on him, but he got his bat around and then tomahawked it into the left field corner. So big moment, Sam. The post game celebration involving Bobby Witt Jr. also included, I believe, some condiments.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition because the reaction on the field was exactly what Rex Hudler mentioned. It was like he was a superstar in his very first, before he took his first at bat. I mean, they were chanting his name and giving him a standing ovation when he was first introduced. They did have the superstar 2 batters later that I noted, who got a very tepid applause from the crowd. And Salvador Perez just led the league in home runs last year.
And RBIs, right?
And RBI. But you got and then he goes into the locker room, and Whit Merrifield said, hey, it's your guys' job to hype him up. It's our job to keep him grounded and remind him he's a rookie. And they did that by, as Whit Merrifield said, finding anything they could find in the kitchen. And they stuffed him in a laundry basket and poured anything they could find on him.
Yeah, so Usually we associate condiments with the condiment race. This time it included the post-game celebration. Let's do a sound check and see if Vahe has joined us. You there, Vahe? Okay. Well, we'll hope
I'm
for.
here, but
You're here and you're not, is what you're saying, right?
yeah, I don't know what. More technical difficulties.
You sound good, bud. You sound good.
Really?
You
Okay.
do. You do. So your turn to win on Bobby Witt.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Well, thanks for that, Vahe.
I also noticed yesterday. I'll give you the Zack Greinke thing. He's good, but I don't want to go on too much. However he put it. Also, yesterday I observed the wind could be a factor. Hey, look, I mean,
you said that beforehand, Vahe. You were astute. You said that before the game started.
Yeah, don't think I'm just making it up on the fly. But look, I think we got the best of everything yesterday with that. I mean, there was nothing to pronounce judgment on if he did come through in that moment. I mean, it just would be like, okay, well, you hope for magic on this moment and you didn't get it, and that's how it would have been, and it wouldn't change, I think, how we look at his arc in front of us. On the other hand, seeing him come through in really not just a moment that he manufactured, but a moment of some, would-be pressure was pretty special. I mean, that gives you a little view of the guy's mindset. We had a nice time with him afterwards. I thought one of the most interesting answers he gave was actually it was my question, but I don't think that was an interesting answer. It was just asking him about the nerves, and he said, yeah, he kept waiting for them to hit, like pregame, nothing, first at bat, nothing. And I think that's going to stay with me. Now we'll see him struggle later. It's just going to happen. It's inevitable. But I think he's got the tools to work his way through and out of those struggles. And that's probably the thing that I think we can see most in his imprint coming into this. Through all he's played across the country, Sam and Lynn both did exceptional jobs in the last couple of days with laying out, who he is and what he's about and what this hype, what's behind the hype. And I think it's a lot of substance behind the hype.
I think that was the most revealing thing that Bobby Witt said yesterday was in response to your question, specifically because it was your question. I thought when he said that he wasn't nervous, that's what we've heard about this guy from his teammates and the manager included and some front office people, that's one of the reasons he's different is the moment never seems too big for him. One of the things that I wrote about in that article you mentioned, Vahe, was look, there's nothing like major league pressure. That's always been the ultimate dream for Bobby Witt Jr. And so therefore, the pressure at the major league level should be greater than anything he's ever experienced. But that doesn't mean his previous experiences don't factor into what he went through yesterday. And as a freshman in high school, he was named the #1 player in the country. So everywhere he went, the opposition knew this is the #1 player in the country. And of course, he's treated differently. He was named the #1 prospect. He was the minor league player of the year. He was the MVP for Team USA. So I do think he's had experiences that have prepared him for something that he went through yesterday, mentally and emotionally. But still, like I said, it was the most revealing thing for him to say he did not feel nerves at all in that moment. And the hit is fantastic. But I actually think the best news for the Royals front office is exactly what he just said in that comment.
I think also, revealing is how he took it all in, but I think also the way the Royals viewed him going into that moment is also pretty revealing. I mean, after the game, there's, I think I asked Mike Matheny about, like, as it's lining up and you're looking at how it's unfolding, are you at all getting nervous for the kid? Or are you sort of like looking to see how he's feeling it out? And Mike Matheny said, no, I wasn't concerned at all. He's like, if anything, he said he was excited to see how he would perform in that spot. And going back to when we were still in Arizona, talking to JJ Piccolo, the general manager, and asking him about, like, are they worried about pressure, especially where it looked like, at this point he hadn't been officially named to the team, but we were talking about, hey, he could be batting between two all-stars, like this kid who never played, who's a top prospect, who's got all this attention. Now, yesterday, Benintendi was batting third and Salvi was fourth, but a lot of times they'll flip it and they'll have Witt Jr, an all-star, the second spot, and then Salvo Perez, an all-star, who led the league in home runs and RBIs last year, and Bobby Witt Jr. was going in that spot in between them a lot of times, and that's what they looked like the plan was going to be. And JJ's response was that at this point they're not worried about that. They're not worried about the pressure. It's just lineup construction. And so for this kid to not even have played in the big leagues yet, and they already said they're past that before he's even got there. They're past worrying about that, and that they want him coming up more times in the lineup. I think that, and then the way that they just were like, yeah, we want to see how this plays out on the first game. That's telling too, that they feel comfortable. I mean, even without having seen it, they were pretty confident what they were going to see.
I think that's an interesting point, Lynn, because there was so much said on the broadcast yesterday, and I've seen it other places too, as people were trying to remember the last time a Royals player entered a season with this much expectation. And the easy answer is Alex Gordon in 2007 because of his monster minor league year and his great career as a college player at Nebraska. The difference is, one of the differences is Alex Gordon didn't have a lineup like this to around him. And I'm not saying that that should have, that led to, some struggles early for Gordon, but he absolutely didn't have, the American League leader in home runs and RBIs, the guy who's gotten the most hits in the major leagues over the last 5 years, around him in the lineup. And I think that's going to help Bobby Witt. But the other thing that I noticed yesterday, just his first at bat, he has a little bit of that bad swing on Bieber's first pitch, and I'm thinking, he's not ready. It turns out that he pops to right field, but he got, he made solid contact. Bieber's a strikeout pitcher. He didn't strike him out, and I remember thinking at that moment that he's ready. He's not going to be overwhelmed by the moment, and he absolutely wasn't when it came, when it came to the biggest moment of the game in the eighth inning.
Well, I think that was what you just hit on with Alex Gordon is the reason that it's an easy comparison to make, but I think what you just hit on is why it doesn't work. I think the Royals lost 100 games the year before Alex Gordon came up. This year's Royals team was 500 after the All-Star break last year. And I know some people tossed that aside and said, yeah, but they were out of the race. But they still went 38-35 after the break. And that Bobby Witt Jr. came into a different environment than Alex Gordon came into. And it's not just the previous year. I mean, I think the fact that this organization has won a World Series gives that entire clubhouse confidence, considering it's the same front office, that they are moving in the right direction. They're moving towards something. When Alex Gordon arrived, what was the reason for the confidence that they were moving towards something? The recent history showed you that they were not. They were perpetually losing 90 to 100 games. And so I think you can't underestimate the environment that Bobby Witt has stepped into and just the impact that's going to have, especially on this first season here.
And one thing I'd add is just, talking about him performing in the spot that he did. And this is one of those things that it's hard to quantify and it's I don't know how you can really, prove it or not. But I still think for him to be able to come through like that and to be as relaxed, I mean, part of it is like we talked about, the way that he's had all this attention on him. I also think part of it is, and we had this conversation with him in February. Last year, after he didn't make the big club, he went down to the minors, and the first couple of weeks he didn't struggle, but he didn't perform as well as he typically does, and some of that was a lot of strikeouts. And he said, looking back on it, he was trying to do too much because he felt like not making the team meant he needed to do more, he needed to show more, of what he could do. And so he was pressing and trying to do a little bit more with every at bat. And that's where the strikeouts went up at the beginning of last season. And he felt like he learned from that. And that's where you see this, he's sort of gotten into this refrain of just trying to be the best, Bobby Witt Jr. I can be and just do that sort of thing. Part of that was coming from, okay, he tried to do more and tried to play even better than he could and produce even more early last season. And he sort of gotten away from that. And I think that's where, you sort of take for granted that season in the minors, his only full season in the minors, was beneficial in him just sort of learning some things, maturing a little bit, going through some experiences that he hadn't had to go through because he was just a dominant player at the levels he'd been at before. If he doesn't have that, maybe last year in the big leagues, he is pressing. Maybe he's trying to do too much. Maybe he's trying to show out. Maybe he's in a spot like yesterday and he's thinking, I got to hit a home run and show everybody and the crowd's going crazy. Instead, he's just saying, okay, I don't have to do anything more. I just have to do what I can do. And again, I say it's unquantifiable. It's, it's something that just, it seems that way. It's just a feel thing, but I don't think we should overlook that.
Well, another reason why that hit was so important in the eighth inning is nobody wanted to play extras yesterday. Man, it looked cold out there. I know it was cold out there. And thank goodness the Royals aren't playing today because it's even colder in Kansas City today. Should be warmer on Saturday when Brad Keller makes the start against Cleveland. All right, the other big development to me was the performance of Zack Greinke, and he was. Look, I know that this is just recency bias from me, but I just remember plenty of opening days where the Royal starter took the ball and couldn't throw strikes, right? And we're going walk after walk, and it's just a disaster. Who can forget last year's? It was 5-5 after the first inning. Well, to see Greinke come out and just pound the strike zone, and with a variety of pitches was so refreshing and reflective of such a veteran pitcher who Cy Young winner, top of his game at certain point is top of baseball at certain points of his career, and delivered an opening day performance that was terrific for the Royals. Sam, what did you make of Zack?
Well, the strikes were the most refreshing element, because as soon as he left the game, the two relievers, Josh Samant and who was it, Len? Jake
Brent.
Staumont and Brent.
Yeah, Brent came in first, and then Staumont.
Yeah, and then Staumont. Yeah,
those two guys combined walked 3 of the first 6 hitters they faced, and Greinke had walked 1 of the 22 he faced. And the Royals and Len and I were looking this up during last game because he knew it, and I was looking it up to make sure. They were second in the American League in walking hitters last year, only 1 behind the Angels. I think they've walked 591 guys in 162 games last year. So to me, that's been a big emphasis for the pitching staff. Mike Matheny's talked about it. They just got to throw in. In fact, when you ask Mike Matheny about a pitcher individually for strike throwing, he says, well, the whole staff has to throw more strikes. And, we talked about a lot of the reasons they got Zack Greinke. But to me, nothing's going to have a better influence than watching him throw strikes, and that fact that when he's in trouble, it's not self-inflicted. Guys may hit him sometimes, but it's not a result of him putting guys on bases and getting himself in trouble.
And how about, one of the things I think that jumped out at both of us right off the bat was just Zack Greinke coming out there, no sleeves, no long sleeves,
Right,
he was
right.
McDowell was in the press box ready to cry because it was so cold, and Greinke's out there, just dealing.
I think the new PR guy lowered the temperature because he likes it a little bit cooler.
But yeah, and with the strikes, let me just and one of the things I think when Sam and I were talking about was in in spring training, because there's always somebody who wants to make too much out of spring training games, but some of the starters who maybe get, like, I'm thinking particularly Carlos Hernandez gave up some home runs. Guys who just come out and ambush first pitch strikes, like, they weren't really concerned about that because they wanted that mentality of you're coming out throwing strikes. They're not worried about guys jumping on fastballs who you're not game planning for in spring training. They want come out, throw strikes. If anything, walks would have been the thing that they would have been concerned about. Guys hitting home runs in spring training games, not worried about that. That meant you were in the zone, you were throwing strikes right off the jump. So
it's just so refreshing to see that, strike. And I think he threw in the first inning anyway. We went 1, 2, 3. I think there was one pitch out of the strike zone. So great to see. And turn the double play. Greinke, a Gold Glove pitcher, turned the double play, and the defense was good all day. And it was he was right. Zack Greinke was correct in pointing that out afterwards. Bobby Witt made a nice play against when the Royals had a shift on, and of course probably the defensive highlight was Nicky Lopez making the diving stop. Greinke's only been pitching for 20 years or so. Says it's one of the best plays he's ever seen. I thought that was a little over the top, but it was a nice play.
It was funny that he complimented that play in that manner, and then when he was asked about his comments on Bobby Witt, he said, "It's really good. Sorry, I don't want to go over the top at the moment." It's like, well, you just said this was one of the best plays you had ever seen. But I do think there was a strategy to that. Zack Greinke was the 20-year-old kid pitching for the Royals in the big leagues, and probably felt some of the pressure that he doesn't want Bobby Witt to feel. So I thought it was strategic. I mean, he's a super smart guy. That he didn't want to gush over a kid after one game. Nicky Lopez had a really good day, though. He's sort of the forgotten piece of this whole Bobby Witt thing because Adalberto Mondesi it short, where Nicky Lopez had led the league in defensive run saves at that position last year, moves to second base. And oh, by the way, he takes advantage of the fact that the left fielder is playing him, like a little league softball distance. So gets the extra base hit for the first RBI, makes the defensive play of the game, and also had the bunt that moved the guy over to put him in scoring position in the eighth.
Absolutely.
Well, and Sam, don't forget, you talk about Greinke sort of downplaying that one. Just refer to the line that I think you had from Witt, right? Their job is to remind him that he's a rookie. Yep. Our job, pump him up. Their job, keep him in line. So there you go. The 20-year vet knows that well, or 19. Yeah.
I loved also how Greinke reminded us that his first game, it was either his first victory or his first game at Kauffman Stadium was against Les Expos. That's how long it's been since Greinke made his debut. Hey, just a couple of kind of news items. Lynn, there was on morning of opening day, some contract news involving Whit Merrifield. So signs an extension. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it was a restructure. The deal the extension he signed before the 19 season put the team option for next season. And so by restructuring, what happened was they picked up his option for next season and they basically flipped around some salary numbers. So he was going to make, I think this year, less than $3 million. Now he's going to end up making like $7 million, and next year's base salary ends up being like 2.7 with some bonuses that's up to an extra $4 million. But so more or less they flipped those years, and he's already got next year locked in. So at least contractually, he's with the Royals for the next 2 seasons, where he would have been going into this year playing and then waiting to see at the end of the season if they were going to pick up an option. Now, that he's here for the next 2. They moved the money around, so that really gives them a little more money to work with next season. And that's on top of, next year, you have, in theory, at least Carlos Santana's money comes off the books. You already traded away, Mike Minor, but then you added Greinke, who's only on a 1-year deal. So it's just freeing up some more money for them next season. And you keep Witt here for at least 2 more years, at least as of right now.
And we know Brad Keller is going to start Saturday's game. How does the rotation shake out after that?
Well, they had not named the fifth starter until yesterday. They made it official that Daniel Lynch will be the fifth starter. So you've got Greinke, Keller, and then I believe it's Bubic Hernandez. Going off the top of my head, and then Lynch has got the fifth game. I know it's Bubic Hernandez with the other two. I just can't remember if it was Bubic Hernandez, Bubic. But I believe it's Bubic Hernandez for the last two games against the Guardians. And then the first game against St. Louis in St. Louis will be Daniel Lynch as the fifth starter, which means Brady Singer and Jackson Kowar are both going to be bullpen pieces, at least to start the season, while you've got the expanded roster.
A little bit of a surprise there, with especially with Singer.
With Singer, yeah, I mean, well, it is in that, you know, he's one of the guys who's probably of that group has pitched the most. He is the guy who's pitched the most of that group. He was the first pick that they had in that class that included, Kowar, Lynch, Bubic, and Heasley. He was the first pick of that group. He was the first one who debuted. I think for the people who pitchers who debuted in 2020 in the majors. He was one of the guys who had logged the most starts in the majors. I think there's maybe two other guys who had as many or a little bit more than him since 2020. So it's surprising in that, but also not surprising in that when it came down to him and Lynch, I think it was pretty clear just off of spring training that Lynch had performed better. And also Lynch is a guy who's got more, he's shown more weapons in terms of being able to use more pitches, where Brady has been primarily, fastball, slider, and the changeup is still, seems like we've been talking about the changeup since he was in the minor leagues and trying to use it more and trying to get better with it, and his reliance on those two pitches. So again, it was a surprising that, his track record said he'd been one of their main guys, but it wasn't surprising that if he came down to those two guys, that Lynch was the one who's seems to be better suited right now, at least, to be in the rotation.
And how about roles in the bullpen for Kowar and Singer? Because look, we know who the closer is, and the setup guys have been somewhat established with Stallmont and Brents, and now with Garrett as well. So, what do you think their roles would be?
Well, they're I'm trying to remember what was the term. Hybrid was the term that Mike Matheny used. I mean, so basically they could be used any number of ways. If you need a long guy, they could be doing that. If it's they could be doing short innings. One inning at a time. They basically could be used any type of way. They haven't ruled out that they could basically could possibly be used in spot starts. The idea, at least right now, is to these guys will be available in the bullpen, but they want to keep them stretched out, which will be interesting to see how that plays out. But the idea is to be able to keep them stretched out so that they could pitch multiple innings, that they could potentially start if needed down the line. But they're not going to say that they won't be used in one inning outings if that's the best way to use them. Okay.
All right, let's wrap it up on this thought. I thought it was somewhat of a minor miracle that the game came off at all, given the new vice president of communications with the Royals. So look, Sam Mellinger, former Kansas City Star columnist and former SportsBeat Live panelist, actually put on a coat and tie and stood at a podium yesterday and performed his first visible duties as the Royals communications chief. Sam, was it a total failure or just a partial failure?
Lot of more jokes in the press box this year at that guy's expense. From the moment I walked in, JJ Piccolo is wearing the Art Stewart jacket, which is a really nice touch by, Dayton Morrow's wearing it. George Brett had it. Mike Sweeney. Basically, they decided to tell everybody except the new VP of communications that they were going to wear this jacket. So I enjoyed him being left out on his first day. He was just wearing a normal suit and tie, which I don't think I've ever seen Sam in a tie before either.
No one has.
We got to hear him on the mic in the press box when they announced changes to the lineup. He is very soft-spoken. I thought my voice didn't carry, and my voice is louder without a mic than his is with the mic. So he's got some growing to do for sure. It's a long season. It's probably going to feel really long to him. But we're hoping, we're optimistic that he can come around and grow into this role.
Oh man, Sam's going to be great. We miss him here at the Star, but good on Sam, and good on you guys, Lynn Worthy, Sam McDowell, Vahe Gregorian for joining us today, Monty Davis for producing, and we will be back with you again next week on a date to be determined.
Thanks, Blair.